Hi, everybody. Welcome to another Chats with Chaudhry. I hope you're safe and well today. I'm delighted to be joined by Dan DeAlmeida, who's Head of Product Management, and Jeff Mazzeo, who is Chief Marketing Officer at Scitara. And today we're getting together because they have recently published a white paper called Scientific Integration Platform, or SIP, Enabling the Modern Laboratory. So we thought we'd delve a bit more into what that white paper is all about and what does it all mean. But first of all, Jeff, Dan, it's lovely to see you both. How are you?
Great. How are you?
Thanks, first one.
It's always good. I always laugh when I have to ask that question when I've got more than one person because they never know who's going to answer that question.
Who's going to go first?
Exactly. Well, look, it's lovely to see you both. Before we start talking about the white paper, though, for those of you who are not familiar with Scitara, it'd be quite good if you give me a quick overview of the business. So, Jeff, would you like to sort of give me a quick overview of that, if that's all right?
Yes, happy to, and I'm sure Dan will add to this as well. So Scitara is a relatively young company. We've been around for a few years. We're a cloud-based software company, and our mission is really to help scientific laboratories to transform and to really focus on how they can accelerate their digital transformation. This is obviously a very hot topic across industries. And what we're focused on is how do we help laboratories connect all the various devices, instruments, and applications that they have running in the laboratory, again, so they can accelerate their digital transformation. I would also add that we're vendor agnostic. We try to work with everyone in the field, and we think that's critical because laboratories have a variety of different tools that they use to achieve their results.
Fantastic. And Dan, would you like to add anything to that?
Yeah, it's an interesting time, with the technology that we have out here today, that we're able to provide this, solution to the challenges we're seeing in the labs, and we've seen them for many years. So as Jeff said, we're a cloud-based system. We're an iPaaS, which is an integration platform as a service, which is really new to people as a technology, but it's very similar to what we're familiar with. So we'll expand a little bit more on that later, but our offering is really meant to help scientists and IT and lab managers increase efficiency in the labs.
Fantastic. Oh, well, my first question is, what does the modern scientific lab actually look like? So, Dan, would you like to kick off with that?
Yeah. Well, it all depends on who you ask. I love looking at stock photos or stock videos of the modern lab where you see people in white coats mixing very colorful, chemicals. It'd be great for reagents and solutions all came in their own colors there. But it's really, there's a lot of technology in there. There's a lot of computers, there's a lot of instrumentation. And what all of those pieces of technology are doing is collecting vast amounts of data. So the scientist is in there really moving data around. There's a lot of science going on, but there's a lot of transcription and data manipulation or data transformation, data collection, data analyzation, right? That's the reason why data science has been such a huge thing. We've shifted from the physical world into the digital twins so that we can look at this. Some of that technology has brought inefficiencies. And so, it's been hard to really change the mindset of paper. There's a huge amount of paper or manual transcription going on, which is really strange, being as advanced and scientific as these labs, are intended to be. They're still doing a lot of these manual processes.
Right. Okay. Well, Jeff, we'd like to add to that. And actually, one thing I should add, viewers, is that Jeff has only recently joined Scitara, having been at Walters for many, many years. So he has got a very different perspective, I think, to this as well. So, Jeff, what would you like to add to that?
Well, it's very prescient that you would say that, because my answer is going to be based on my experience working for an instrument company for 25 years. Yeah, I would say the one other thing about the modern lab that's maybe different is that it's got a variety of different types of instruments. And that's really driven by the fact that the problems that we're trying to solve are so much more complex. So, in the past, you think about pharmaceutical testing, like LC was the majority of it, right? Maybe some dissolution, et cetera. Nowadays, with some of these complex modalities, it's mass spectrometry, it's flow cytometry, et cetera. So I would say that the modern lab has also become much more complex in that regard.
Right. Okay. And what technologies are actually required to support it these days? Dan, would you like to start with that one?
Yeah, as much as you can, right? That's as Jeff was saying, the instrumentations are getting more and more complex. I started out and many moons ago, and computers were basically, starting out, if you will, as well, reel-to-reel tapes and, disconnected applications. And so you'd print out papers. And today it's gotten a lot more advanced. You're looking at instruments that are quote unquote smart, and trying to help the scientists with predictions. You're looking at all these cloud services out there. So it's not just about instrumentation, it's about software. And how do we take that data and actually move it along and improve communication across the whole ecosystem in the laboratory? So, it can leverage from something as complex as flow cytometry systems or bioreactors, or, to something as simple as just a temperature sensor that's recording the laboratory environment along the way. And all of that, going back into either cloud systems or, some type of data lake, if you will. So, all of these terms we're not as familiar with, 15, 20 years ago. And today it's more technology focused. Scientists, huge part of it, but they're moving those machines around and really collecting that data.
Right. And Jeff, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I guess the only thing that I would add to that is the need to have an infrastructure to exchange data between the data generators, the instruments and things like that, and the data consumers, things like, eLab notebooks, LIMS, et cetera. And obviously that's starting to steer the conversation in the direction of what we do, but some way to connect all these various things, devices, instruments, applications, in a way that data can be automatically exchanged is a critical need for a modern lab.
Well, that sort of segues nicely into my next question, and maybe even answers part of it, which is, why is data mobility important to support digital transformation?
Yeah, let me start with that, and I'm sure Dan will have additions. So let's first define what is meant by data mobility, because that might be a new term for people as well. So data mobility basically says that data should be moved to where it needs to be, when it needs to be, at will. So in other words, it gets back to what I was saying before about the automated data exchange. Why is that important? Well, it's important because what that allows you to do is get away from things like manual transcription of data between systems, or between a system and an eLab notebook or a LIMS, for example, which Dan touched on. But it also allows you to start to automate workflows. And we think that that's a critically important part of a modern lab as well, is that you're leveraging automation to make the lab much more productive, much more efficient, to reduce cycle time, et cetera. So data mobility is really foundational to achieving that.
Right. And Dan, anything to add to that?
Yeah, it's hugely important in the efficiency perspective, right? When scientists become scientists, their desire is to do science. And today they're doing a lot of just paperwork, or, manual transcription to what Jeff was saying. I'm at an ELN and I need to collect my sample. So I write it down on a piece of paper. I go to a balance. I write down on a piece of, or the back of the glove. The back of the glove is standard practice these days. And that's terrifying. These are life-saving drug products that are out there. And the data mobility is really about taking that data and allowing the scientists to focus on the important stuff, right? The quality of the science, while the automation behind it really transfers that information in a secure and efficient way, right? So we know where it's coming from, we know all its data points, we know where it's going. And there's nothing in between that's really stopping that. It's not stopping in a repository along the way, it's data in flight, and it can be processed and transferred to many points at the same time.
Right. So building on that, what are the common challenges then people currently face using data in the modern lab? I mean, you've talked about data mobility, but are there any other challenges you would say that people do face within the modern lab using that data?
Yeah, I'll take that. It's really the vast and unprecedented amounts of data. Right. So as we talked about, there's complex systems. With complex systems, there's more results, there's more interpretation that's going on, and all of that is consuming the time. Now, as we start to free up that data from the scientists, we can apply technologies like ML or AI on top of that to really, again, increase that efficiency there. And aggregating all of that data, making those interpretations, that should be left up to the machines. And then as the scientist comes in, we'll put on those eyes to make sure the quality is there, or make those interpretations that are needed to make sure those results are in high quality and accessible as we can go forward.
Right. And Jeff, anything to add to that?
Yeah, maybe something else I would add to that is that, and I think Dan touched on this a bit, is that data formats are very different. So, outputs from instruments and what data consumers want to have the output in can be different, right? So, that's a challenge. Having said that, though, one of the things that we believe at Scitara is that the data format that, the customer wants the data in is up to them. That's their choice, right? So we try to support all data formats, but you really need a way to be able to convert data from one format into another and then back again if necessary. So that's a significant challenge and one that we support as part of our product offering.
It's funny you should say that, because I was going to bring that up and say, well, look, there are so many different instruments and different workflows within a lab being used, and they do bring out and churn out different data in different ways. How do you aggregate all that and make that commonality, if you like, so that you can sort of read that data in one way? So that's obviously an issue that you need to overcome. Now let's talk about your white paper, though. So you produced this white paper. What is a scientific integration platform then, and how does it differ to what is already out there? Dan, do you want to talk about that?
Sure. A scientific integration platform is really about the challenges we talked about, right? How do we get data mobility? How do we free up the data from being in a single repository, if you will, like an instrument or a data lake, and really use that data in flight? Our offering is an iPaaS. So as I said before, it's an integration platform as a service. And so what that means is we actually have a cloud hosted application, right, that allows users to log into and create some business logic in there. But we also connect to the systems on-prem, which means we're taking that data and we're moving them. So it's more of a peer-to-peer and less of a point-to-point solution. Right. Today, the challenges are when you write an integration into a system, it's going from your ELN to your CDS, or it's going from your LIMS to your ELN. What we're really doing is with SIP is creating an integration platform that allows this data to really be mobile along that way. I don't want to keep using that word mobility in there, but it keeps coming up. But so it's transferable from your ELN to your LIMS to your CDS to whatever data repository you want, and that data moves around very freely to allow the scientists to, again, focus on what they need. It also improves the deployment efforts. As you build all of these point-to-point solutions, there's redundancy in that. And so we're helping reduce that redundancy by creating a common platform. It's not just a standard. You sort of touched on this a little bit. There's lots of different formats out there. There's also lots of standards out there, but those are suggestions on how the format should look. This is actually an application to provide a means for scientists to transform that data into that format that it needs to move to the other system. Right.
Okay. And Jeff, anything to add to that?
I think Dan's done a great job on that. I think the only thing I would add is I would reiterate the peer-to-peer nature of the scientific integration platform. And Dan touched on what that means, but I'll just add one more thing, and that is that, and this gets into the agility of the lab, if you have a new technology that you need to bring in, and you're not using a peer-to-peer network, you're using point-to-point integrations, you've now got to build an integration of that new instrument technology to maybe your ELN, maybe to your LIMS, maybe to other parts of your infrastructure. So you now need to build all these point-to-point integrations to kind of integrate it into your lab. Whereas with a peer-to-peer network, once you connect it to the network, it now can talk to any other thing that's connected to the network. And so it really allows you to add new technology very, very easily, which we know, again, is going to be important because of the complexity of challenges that labs are trying to solve.
Great, thank you for that. And again, I think you've already touched upon this, but what challenges does it help overcome? I suppose you've already talked about that in terms of becoming peer-to-peer and the mobility and so on.
Well, yeah, let me just add a couple more things. So in terms of what problems does it solve? So Dan talked about, believe it or not, there's still a lot of manual data transcription that occurs in labs today, right? So with an integration platform and with data mobility, you now have controlled automated data exchange, and that, leads to less transcription errors, et cetera. The other thing that the scientific integration platform lets you do is what I talked about before, which is to automate workflows. So once you can move data around, you can automate workflows. And this allows you, again, to dramatically improve the productivity, I should say, of the laboratory.
Fantastic. Right. Anything else to add to that, Dan?
No, I think Jeff said it well.
Perfect. Now, looking ahead, how do you see this developing going forward? And, I suppose, how do you see the lab of the future, if you like, which is a very common phrase, but how do you see that developing going forward now with the SIP platform?
Yeah, let me start with that. And again, I think, so we talked about once you have everything on this peer-to-peer network and you're automating data exchange and you're starting to automate your workflows, now you can start to do some other things by having this in place. So for example, you'll have the ability to truly measure your asset utilization, not which instruments are on, but like how many samples are being run through them. So you can envision going from a status of where assets are underutilized to optimized asset utilization. We talked about data curation and transfer, right? The different formats, et cetera. You can automate that now. One other thing about our platform is that it has an event stream that tells you all the digital transactions that happen. One could envision, mining that through analytics to gain insights into the laboratory's efficiency, but you can also envision in a compliant area using that to monitor compliance. And then finally, because of the amount of data that's moving through here, you also have a different way potentially to think about how you archive data in a more modernized way than the way it's done today. Right.
And Dan, any thoughts on that as well?
Yeah, I mean, I would love to talk about Lab of the Future, and we could have a whole separate conversation on that. But if data is the lifeblood of the lab, a scientific integration platform is essentially the the circulatory system, not the central nervous system. And it's moving that around. And as Jeff was saying, as you start connecting all these pieces, now you have this ecosystem that's almost a living ecosystem within your laboratory that's communicating internally. And that's really what scientists want. They want to be freed up from having to do the extra work or what they're perceiving as extra work, right? And they want tools that are useful when they need them, not tools that they need to go find and use, right? It's this whole different perspective on user experience. And scientists are no different. They want to go in the lab, they want to do their work, they want to collect data, but they don't want to have to be burdened with the data collection and the data transfer, right? So there's so much we can do with all of these IoT solutions that are in laboratories these days, sensors, technologies, cameras. You start putting in all that power, and you connect that all together, and it's going to be amazing what we can do in the future with this.
Fantastic. And one thing we didn't really touch upon when we had this conversation, but obviously it'll have a big impact, is those people have to work remote or access data or do experiments remotely as well, because you have access to all that data through the cloud wherever you are as well, don't you?
Correct. Yes.
Fantastic. Now, final question is, where can people get more information? You want to learn more about this, and where can they get more information?
Yeah, I mean, I think the obvious place would be go to our website, www.scitara.com. But I would say also that speaking for myself only here, please connect with me on LinkedIn. I'd love to hear directly from customers, and connect with me that way, and we can have a one-on-one conversation as well.
Brilliant. And
I will second that as well.
And I'm sure you guys will be at some events coming up in the not too distant future as well, where people can look out for you. And obviously the white paper that we've been talking about, I'll put the link to it above this video so people can download it and have a read for themselves, see what you were talking about in a bit more depth, and obviously put any questions. So there you go, viewers. If you would like to know more about the Scientific Integration Platform, or SIP for short, then have a read of the white paper. Put any questions you've got in the comments, because I'm sure Jeff and Dan would love to see them and interact with you from that point of view, and also message them directly on LinkedIn, as they said, and we'd love to engage with you that way as well. So Jeff, Dan, it's lovely to see you both. Jeff, good luck in the new role.
Thank you.
Success. Dan, and you've actually only been in the role for a relatively small time as well, so good luck with your role as
Thank
well. And I look forward to hopefully catching up with you both in person in the not too distant future as well. So viewers, there you go. If you'd like to know more about the SIP, then check out the white paper, go to the website, engage with Jeff and Dan via LinkedIn, and also leave any comments you have below the video. And until next time, as always, stay well and stay safe. Bye-bye.